Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond Normal podcast. I am your host, Kenny Groom. As always, I'm thrilled to have you here. This is a special episode as we are kicking off 2025 with the theme we've been spending this entire month as we figure out, how we move forward on the theme of owning your story, leveraging storytelling in a lot of ways as a superpower. Today, I want to reflect on how this podcast has evolved from a simple idea into a platform that creates a measurable community impact. Emphasis on that community there. Whether you've been with us from the beginning or you're just now tuning in for the very first time, this episode is here to offer up just some insights around how we can leverage storytelling to offer incredible solutions and products to the world. Without further ado, I want to dive into the story behind Beyond Normal Media and the power that storytelling has had on us as we look to drive incredible change really across the world. Starting out, um, taking everybody back to the beginning, Beyond Normal Media started out really with the core of the podcast as a passion project of mine. I wanted to highlight incredible underserved founders, those who often don't get the spotlight that they deserve, especially during the time where I started, 2020. Businesses were, for the most part, going out of business in local communities, just given the circumstance. The very first few episodes were super raw. I didn't have fancy equipment or the clearest vision at the time. I just knew, I wanted to be highlighting the stories of incredible underserved founders. What really surprised me was the initial reaction with, I can think back to a couple people reaching out and just saying something along the lines of these founder stories really are inspiring to me. And it's got me thinking about starting my own business. I had people in my family. As folks know, getting family to support your business, even if, at first there's not a monetary element, that's really difficult to do. So I had some really early wins. That let me know I need to dig into this a little bit more. I need to sink my teeth into the beast is what I like to say that I did in that moment. I even had a couple folks who were guests, some of the very first guests come back to me with the feedback that they didn't realize that others were having these exact challenges that they were having. Black founders at the time, a lot of them were figuring out, how to keep their business open. Some folks were actually thinking ahead, having their end goal in mind, trying to grow their business via investments and just different avenues. And so it was really surprising just to hear the feedback from all parties involved, whether it was listeners or just some of the founders that we had as guests. Next up, I want to pivot a little bit into this community aspect of storytelling that I just mentioned, right? That it's a community, right? If our listeners are giving us feedback along with our guests who are the founders, right? There's this really great like full circle effect, right? That happens in our case, right? And so fast forwarding to today, how the podcast has grown into Beyond Normal Media, more than just a podcast, right? We're here to amplify voices, create visibility for Black founders, and really spark and continue sparking important conversations around equity in business, right? That's a broad topic, but there's a lot of meat on the bones there, right? In terms of um, what the seat at the table for those who want to take a gamble and start their business looks like. But then also there's this element of the consumer, the end party that partakes in the product or solution, being able to really determine where they can put their dollars, put their resources towards to grow the story of others. Like, I think of going to the movies, right? When you spend that money on the ticket and then that movie at that money at the concessions, like you're really allowing that story that was put together to grow even more. So whether it's an indie flick, right? Something where somebody put something together and they bootstrapped it, or it could be something like a big Disney blockbuster, right? All the Marvel movies that we saw, the avatars of the world that grow to incredible scale. The people that attend these movies and spend their dollars, you're giving your resources so that that story can grow, right? And there's a really great parallel there for business owners, in particular, who are starting out to leverage their story, right, to give people something that they can put their resources into that'll grow. Here's some ways, right, when it comes to that community aspect of storytelling to that we can consider. And we'll start out with, for us, it was about connecting the founders to resources. And I'll dig a little bit deeper into that now, right? So guests on our podcast, they've shared, um, how being featured led to them having new partnerships. Maybe they listened to another founder that was a guest who had access to different funding opportunities than they had. And just ultimately, um, you know, the chance to kind of share and learn um, from others in the process. Oftentimes, being a founder, you're a team of one. It's a really lonely activity to go through starting something on your own. You know, not all of us are lucky enough to have somebody as a co-founder or just even have a support system, right? And so there's power in sharing your story and then others chiming in and giving you that feedback. Like I mentioned, we had some success early on where the guests were pulling insights from the conversations, and then the audience, the end listener, right? Because we're in the business of podcasting. Every stream counts. Want to throw that out there. If you have or haven't, we appreciate any um, streams from the past or any future ones, because I know if you're listening to this, you're going to be checking out our content, all the content that we have out in the world. The second thing I want to touch on is raising awareness. So by sharing data and stories, like the ones that we continue to share, even in our most recent newsletter, we shine light on some of these obstacles that Black founders face, and this sparks even further conversation around what the solution should look like. I'll give you an example. Um, one of the Some of the feedback I got from founders that we had as guests was around just the incredible struggle with raising capital for your business, right? And so upon looking through that, I think at the time when I first looked up this stat, it was like maybe 1.5% of venture capital specifically goes to Black founders. Quick update: that number is like pretty much at or below, right below 1% now. To give you an idea of some of the challenges for Black founders. But I that stat stood out to me as somebody who is a undergrad math major, somebody who's been in the business world, and actually developed quite a few products around lending in particular. That one stood out to me. And so what that allowed me to do was reach out to venture capitalists. Luckily, at the time, our key sponsor, knew some VCs in their space, and so they were actually able to line us up a couple VCs. One of them being, I think one of the first ones, or the very first one, was Matt McConnell, McConwell. I'll put the link below because I want to make sure I'm getting that name right. But we had several VCs on, several individuals who may have been a part of organizations that are responsible for giving mostly monetary resources to founders, and that was a way of us to to take part in the founder's story, listen, and then try to give some sort of value back to them, right? And so that's just an example of how you can raise that awareness, and then with the marriage of data and storytelling, how some really cool engagement and incredible constructive conversations can happen. The last thing I want to touch on is inspiring action, just overall. Our listeners tell us they've taken steps to launch their business, join creative platforms, or even invest in Black owned ventures because of what they've learned through us. You know, the investment piece is really important because we're going through a phase now where some of the barriers are being taken down, that in the past have kept folks from, just the average consumer from investing in their business outside of buying product. But if that business isn't at a point where it can scale and have enough product for people to buy, that is like a catch 22 scenario where the founder needs investments, but they need the growth and revenue before they can get the investments. It's like they're just in a weird place. But crowdfunding, some of the different investment paths that someone could take are really starting to open up. I'm not necessarily sure. I don't have a lot of data as of now in terms of whether or not that leads to a more like a higher success rate for Black founders per se yet. I think it's still kind of early. But with that being said, it's always good to see avenues and channels being, opened up for those who didn't necessarily have ways for people to invest in their business to now have somebody who can raise their hand, and even if it's, $50, $100, have somebody invest in their business. I think one of the speaking of like success stories, one of the things I'm hearing, we're at the top of 2025. Social media platforms are kind of going through some challenges now. The ones that we all go to, the Instagrams and even like the TikToks, with TikTok kind of sort of being taken away from us for a couple hours and then being given back to us. But I think it's showing creatives that that they have to continue to. I'm in this bucket as well. You have to continue to explore the different platforms so you know which platform gives you the best leverage with your audience. And many of the platforms that we all use right now, uh, at the end of the day, they own all the data. They own the channels to you getting to your end audience. There's still value in that for founders who can scale it up. But there's platforms out there. Right now, one of the hot ones that's actually Black owned is called Fanbase. They've essentially come up with a way um, for creatives who are on platforms like Instagram and specifically in TikTok to migrate all your content over with a few clicks, and then you can start owning your audience. Kind of easy, relatively easy, and then starting to grow your subscriber base and having more of a direct communication with your audience. Super early, but they've actually gone down a path of, just due to all the turmoil with the established social media platforms, where they're starting to get some really incredible interest via crowdfunding I was actually able to take part in that, and I've been using, testing out their platform to see how we can incorporate that into all the things we're doing. But that being said, it just goes back to my original point of, you have to continue to explore these platforms to find the right platform for you. There is no uniform answer in that case, but just know that there's some really incredible platforms being built currently out there. Lastly, I want to touch on, or one of the last things I'll touch on is, you know, how people can be a part of the movement that's going on right now that I just mentioned. Um, as we build out our capabilities to highlight more incredible founders in season 7, we're picking target markets really around the world. We've got a couple here in the United States that we're focusing on, but we do have some global opportunities to expand. There's a couple ways, right? Just in terms of our story that people can kind of take part in our movement, but I think it's relevant to others who are trying to leverage storytelling. Some quick rules of engagement, right? If we have an audience that's looking to engage, you got to give your audience some direction. So first up, just sharing your story. If someone's a founder, or creative, or change maker, we want to make sure they're in the right space to not be afraid to share their journey. And so if you're a founder, creative, a change maker, we'd love to have a conversation with you. We'd love to have you, highlight your story on our platform. But if there's a way that we can support what you're doing, um, let us know, because you never know who's going to be listening to your story. Like I mentioned towards the beginning, just how founders were hearing from other founders via our platform, and our listeners were taking gambles on themselves after hearing founders on our platform. Like, you never know. Even if you're starting out, those starting moments oftentimes are what's going to inspire others to take those leaps of faith on themselves. Second is supporting Black owned businesses, right? So whether it's through investment, like I mentioned before, or crowdfunding, if you can do that, or even if you're an angel investor, just investing in Black owned businesses is really important right now. And mentorship, as well as one area where those of us who are used to being in corporate America and may have functional domain expertise can add a lot of value to business owners who are businesses of one or businesses of few, employees who are building things from scratch, right? And so you think about some of the things that operational, big, huge matrix organizations that we all work at, established companies, we have domain expertise. Not saying you take whatever that proprietary sauce of your employer is and plop it down into a small business owner, but you probably have some expertise that you can add to their business. An example of that being, for me, I've worked in tech, in analytics, and customer success, in different parts of different organizations at some really big, huge, um, publicly traded companies. And right now, I've taken that experience as I build out Beyond Normal Media, and I actually mentor at Techstars, and a couple other different programs. They have Techstars in so many cities, really worldwide. But that's just one example, right, where I can take some of that expertise from my corporate experience and actually give back to somebody who's building something from scratch. It is not easy at all to build something from scratch. So that's just one example. For us, next up, for those who are, I think many, many, many business owners now are going to have to be creative. They're going to have to create content. When you create that content, you want people to subscribe, leave a review if possible of whatever your end product is, and share, right? So for us as Beyond Normal, we have our podcast. We appreciate anybody who subscribes, leaves a review, listens to an episode, shares an episode with their network. It helps amplify the stories of the people we're highlighting, but then also for us as a business, right? You take these experiences and it enhances the value you can charge anybody, right? In terms of the solution you bring. So in the case of our podcast, the more listeners we have, we can go to sponsors, we can go to other businesses that are looking to have ad space, right? We can go to the most recently this year, we put in our bid on a couple applications at some conferences to be media partners. And so that all builds the case for whatever you're building, right? When people, support your product in the different ways they can. Obviously, the end goal is to, probably the most valuable thing to do is really to buy product from somebody, buy somebody's service. But in those cases where you can't, there's still things you can do out there. And a lot of business owners right now are being creative. They're putting out content that is a really great way as we look to navigate 2025 for folks to support us. But those are other creative individuals out there. And next up is exploring new platforms. I touched on this a little bit earlier with the fan base example. In our newsletter, we're highlighting what others are working on, right? And so it could be somebody who's compiling thousands of Black business owners, or it could be the fan base app, or it could be somebody who has a grant program for somebody who needs additional resources for their business. Like, it doesn't all have to end up be something that is on our platform. At the end of the day, it feeds those individuals within our network, within our ecosystem. And so I got to make sure I'm putting it out there. If I'm finding these resources, I got to put it out there to see if our users can leverage it. But let's just, all of this is really to build that community that I touched on towards the beginning of the call as well, where we all thrive. Like, that's going to be a key theme where you get a pool, you get a group of businesses that really figure out how they can support each other. Those dollars start flowing and circulating, and it creates like these local economy effects that are, I think, are super powerful. And those local economies start to scale up easier, and it allows everybody involved to have a good piece, their piece, significant piece of the pie that's out there. So in closing, I just wanted to leave you all with this thought. Storytelling is really one of the most powerful tools we have. It builds bridges. It inspires action. It creates opportunity. Just think about this. When you go to the movies, the story that resonated with you the most, and the actions that followed once you saw that movie. That's how I like to position it. Um, every time we choose our own story, we're contributing to a larger movement of empowerment and equity, specifically Black founders who are taking a gamble on themselves. I think there's maybe like 300,000 to 400,000 Black businesses here in the States. Each of those businesses is really, setting in motion, um, driving value, unlocking value in our community that we all know that we desperately need right now. Most Black businesses, right, they're not at a point where they think the numbers is like less than, it's like 40% or less of Black businesses have like 100,000 in revenue or more. The number's right around there in terms of the percentages. So 60% of the businesses, right, if I said that correctly, don't have revenue anywhere near that for the most part, right? If you think about averages. And so there's so many businesses out there where they're in a mode of exploring how to unlock value, right? They're figuring out what their story is as they're going through it. You know, all the things that I mentioned around how you can support and engage with folks right now, it's really important to support and engage with these businesses that are out here, right? 60% that they're in this mode of exploring, figuring out, what their story is. They're in the midst of it. They're going through, probably some real shit, and they've got to, the feedback, the conversations that they're having are really vital to, them getting to the point in the story, right, that we all want to see them in, the climax, the point in the story where there's revelations being made. So just keep that in mind. Thank you all, those that have stuck with me through this conversation. As I'm thinking through this, we're starting out 2025, just focusing on owning your story for those who are creatives, business owners, folks who are really taking a gamble on themselves. This support for those who are listening in means everything to me. I'm excited about what we got ahead. If this episode resonates with you, share it with somebody, leave us a comment, let me know what I can improve on. I'm always looking for feedback. I appreciate the feedback. Until next time, keep owning your story, and remember, there's nothing normal about what we're doing by creating businesses. We're being beyond the norms.